Little known fact here, Saskatchewan is set to become a rare earth super supplier, rivaling China in developing key components that we all need in cell phones, EVs, electric vehicles, renewables. It's quite an extraordinary statement. And Mike Crabtree, who is the president and CEO of the Saskatchewan Research Council, is with us to talk about this and biotech and cannabis and oil sands and pipelines. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you here. You come out of the oil energy sector, so that is obviously a priority, but I know you're very keen on this development of the rare earth minerals and things like lithium that we use in batteries. And when I looked at this and read this, that the only other big supplier out there is China.
Yes.
And then it's us. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Where are we?
Well, we are. China dominates.
Yes.
At the moment, and we have here in Canada, in Saskatchewan and across Canada, a number of junior mining companies with very, very significant deposits of rare earths. I mean, our deposits are, perhaps 10 or 12% of the entire global resource. So it's really, really
That's a significant.
It's very, very significant. The challenge that we have, and I know we'll come back to this in a few minutes, but the challenge here is that we have an upstream sector that is nascent, that is developing, but has no route to market. Its only potential route to market is to mine our Canadian rare earth ores and then send them to China, and then of course be hostage to whatever price that China is.
We've seen that movie.
To pay. So it is very clear that in order for Canada to move forward with this really important sector, we have to establish a supply chain. So we've got an upstream piece that is stranded. We need to develop a midstream capability, the capability to produce, to process and produce the rare earths, and then we need to develop the downstream sector, markets to sell them to.
Well, certainly there'll be markets. It's the middle piece that's difficult.
It's the middle piece that is difficult. But in creating a middle piece, you've got to be very careful that you don't build it on the basis of build it and they will come.
Yeah.
Because all you get is a bunch of
yeah.
dead ball players show up. You've got to understand what your upstream market and needs are, the needs of Canadian miners, and also what the needs are of the OEMs, the actual end users, which are at the moment largely in Japan and South Korea and Germany, and increasingly will be in the States.
That's what I was going to say. I mean, we're watching the current battle with Huawei and the repatriating manufacturing jobs to North America. Those kinds of issues are big, even though the politics are very different on both sides of the border. But if that happens, I mean, we are going to start to see some domestic, or at least our trading partners, our big trading partners like the U.S., start to develop these products themselves, and then they'll need this, presumably.
They will. So there are a number of dynamics here. There are the sort of immediate short-term, hopefully short-term, global world trade dynamics with China. But one way or another, that is going to be resolved in the next months or short number of years. There is another dynamic here, is that the utilization and the growth of need for rare earths is going to go up by at least tenfold in the next 10 or 15 years.
What we've witnessed just with COVID alone, of telehealth, of kids learning remotely, virtual, the need for computers, phones, technology
is increasing.
Yeah.
The real on top of that, the real substantial increase in utilization is going to come from electric vehicles, and from wind turbines, and from solar, and from all of these sorts of like more utility-based use of rare earths. So our phones that we've got on the desk there use a few milligrams of rare earths. They're essential, but they're in very, very small amounts. when you're talking about an electric car, you're talking about the engine of the electric car, which is about the size of a watermelon, by the way. It's tiny. But it is a rare earth magnet, incredibly powerful. So you've got a 400 horsepower engine that's the size of a watermelon that is powered by rare earth magnets. But that is many, many fold times more than required in your phone. So the utilization of these materials is going to skyrocket.
It leads almost immediately, and I don't want to get so distracted, but we talk about the new world, whether it's solar or whether it's wind or whether it's electric vehicles, as somehow being separate and apart from the old industries, whether it's oil and gas or mining. They're inextricably linked.
They are. I mean, the old industries, as we say, like things like in this province, potash, uranium, diamonds, pea grain, which is an old industry, which is now 6 years old. So I suppose it's now old. All of these industries now are looking to increase their competitiveness, increase their productivity, reduce their carbon footprint, their carbon intensity. All of these are going to require the technologies from the new industries in order to be able to do that. So there's going to be this hybridization and coordination between the old and the new. And that's going to be a critical thing as we move forward over the next 10 or 20 years into the sorts of transitions we'll be talking about.
Now, I know you came from England and via some warmer places as you worked in the oil and gas industry, but we keep having this conversation about things like electric vehicles. I live about 3 hours from Saskatoon. Currently, I can't get here in winter in an electric vehicle. I'm not even sure about summer. Where would I charge it? What is the cost? And will it function when it's minus 40? Could we just go off on that tangent for a moment?
Wow. Okay, let me just break that up a little bit. At the moment, the answer to that is no, almost across the board. The range of the vehicles, just maybe on a good day, as if we had more hills here and it was all downhill, you'd be good, with the wind behind you. But no, it's right kind of at the limit of the technology at the moment. Then of course, there's infrastructure piece. Is in driving from your hometown, there are plenty of gas stations. Well, the infrastructure for EV is going to be required in order to have the same sort of capability there. The other point here is that, are you prepared when you're driving here to have to plug your vehicle in for 3/4 of an hour to get a charge that's going to take you another 150 kilometers? The answer is no. So
when I'm trying to get to a plane.
When you're trying to get to a plane.
It'll now take me a day to drive from.
Takes you 3.5 minutes to fill your tank with gas. Even 10 minutes or 15 minutes, which is where the technology is going at the moment. What we need is somewhere where you pull in, you plug in, and in the same sort of order of time, you recharge your vehicle. That's going to require some really dramatic changes in technology. The other areas are batteries. Within the actual engines themselves, which I described before, these like watermelons, are just superb, very, very efficient. It's the batteries to power them. And some of the technologies coming in will be things like hydrogen fuel cells, of which Canada is a world leader in the development of these fuel cells. So you will actually be going potentially to your gas station and not charging with electricity, but pumping hydrogen into your tank. The hydrogen is then converted by the fuel cell to electricity, which your watermelon engine, I'm going to have to stop using that analogy.
No, it works.
With your watermelon engine,
helping us visualize.
Powers your vehicle. So you're literally gassing up, but you're gassing up with a zero CO2, zero carbon intensity fuel.
But we're still going to need the lithium for the batteries, and that we have as well.
Yeah, we have lithium, and again, there's an environmental sustainability piece here. Everybody, not everybody, but a lot of people want their electric vehicles because it makes them feel good. The fact that those rare earths have been produced in China in incredibly poor environmental conditions both for the humans who are actually doing the work there
Exactly.
and for the environment. And similarly, for lithium, the so-called lithium triangle in Latin America here.
Yeah.
You know, we're in areas like Bolivia, whether you're using potable water, drinking water, for a population that doesn't have enough drinking water, and they're using it to provide the lithium that we then happily put in our electric vehicles. So
And feel good about it,
and
which
feel
we
good-
shouldn't.
And feel good about it. So the Canadian brand here about producing Canadian rare earths and Canadian lithium in an environmentally sustainable manner is going to be a huge benefit for us and for that Canadian brand.
And again, I mean, because we are producing this more ethically than many other countries, but it's coming out of tailings ponds from oil sands and these kinds of things, which people want to pretend don't exist or won't exist tomorrow, but they must exist to create the products we need to have the other world.
Yeah, and this leads very much into what we want as a society.
Mm-hmm.
We can, at the one end of the scale, be complete climate change deniers, and all of this is simply just a normal part of the cycle of the planet, which I don't subscribe to.
Right.
On the other side, where sort of radical climate change activism,
Right.
to the extent that it is destructive and it is turning the average person in the street off that and diverting them from the real issues. What we want to do is to establish what I call a radical center, which it's going to need radical thought, radical new technologies, clear thought and clear communication with us as a society, and a desire to do that. And that transition is going to mean that we will be producing oil and gas for the next 20 or 25 or 30 years, probably on a declining curve, and we'll
Right.
be using it for different things. At the same point, we'll be looking at utilizing the revenue and the time that gives us to rapidly develop these new technologies.
That's the part that I have trouble with. I mean, none of the miracle cures, you know, tomorrow we're going to wake up and drive my electric car or heat all our homes in Saskatchewan by wind power or solar power. I don't understand why 20 or 25 or 30 years is an impossible time frame. Of course, we're going to be transiting out of the heavy reliance we've got. We need time because the other technologies aren't there. They're not ready. They're not cost effective, even remotely at this point.
And they're not integrated.
Right.
You know, look at the integration of our society here between oil and gas and power and utilities, right from your gas station to powering your home furnace. It's an integrated system that has been built up over decades and decades, probably if you want to look at it, the last 100 years.
Right.
So we're looking to create an integrated clean tech, new technology transition. It can't happen overnight. It just simply can't. And we don't understand some of the technologies. There are gaps in the technologies. We don't have an understanding of how smart grids are going to integrate with this. So we're basically looking to build out 100 plus years of utilities in a 15, 20, 25 year time span. Now, I believe that's possible, but we got to start thinking about that radical centerpiece rather than just shouting at each other from different poles.
This is the problem. It's trying to get out of the cycle of elections, whether it's provincial or across the border in the U.S. or even here domestically at home, because then the rhetoric becomes part of the political battle as opposed to the kind of discussion we so desperately need to have.
Yeah. We have to decouple energy transition, clean tech, and the environment. We have to decouple that from it being a belief system. It is not a belief system.
Right.
I, like many people, are people of faith.
Yeah.
But I don't believe in climate change. It's not a belief system.
Right.
I look at the science and I say that this is actually what's occurring.
Yeah.
And
here's
here's a fact. And these are the facts that we need to take into account in order to be able to engage this. So when people ask me whether I believe in climate change, I say, no, it's not a belief system.
Yeah, it's not the philosophy by which you raise your children, or it's a different. So we're seeing the intensity of this. The forest fires in on the west coast of
Yeah.
the U.S. are heartbreaking, and it's become a battle about climate deniers versus people who think that's the explanation for absolutely everything,
Yeah.
whether it's COVID or a forest fire or Donald Trump's election. Like, I don't know how we separate that conversation out. How do you get there? How do you find a place to have this?
The answer is, of course, is that it's complex, and it is not the situation that's the problem. It's the approach. Mm-hmm. So, for example, if one candidate is saying this has nothing to do with climate change,
right,
this particular climate event, whether it's hurricanes or tornadoes or
right,
or the current fires on the west coast of the U.S., that's not the issue. Because the other one will say, yeah, it's absolutely, we need to address climate change. Well, you've got 4 years in power. Plus whatever you get after, maybe a second term. We're talking about the changes required in that 20 to 25 to 30 year time frame.
Exactly.
So arguing about whether it was because you didn't clear the bush,
right,
or whether it's we've got an increase in climate change causing that, it's a false argument.
But
we're never going to. Neither side is going to get the satisfaction.
No, and we kind of have to agree, if we're going to go on, that probably both. You need better forest management.
Yeah.
And we need to do something about
So
climate.
the answer is both. But of course, if you're polarized and it's become politicized,
then it's right or wrong.
Then then you have to have a simple digital or binary solution or answer to this. And of course,
this is a little bit what's happened to the debate in this country about pipelines, and you were talking about having kind of trapped substances. I mean, the story this summer of sending our oil to New Brunswick, or Alberta oil to New Brunswick, via the Panama Canal, seems a bit crazy.
Yeah.
So, and I know we've talked in this country for many years about energy corridors where you would actually take a chunk of land coast to coast, highway number 1, and just say we're going to run everything through that, whether it's telecom, whether it's oil and gas pipelines, and negotiate access to that land with obviously First Nations and local governments of all descriptions. Like, is anything like that realistic? Can we do any major project in this country or anywhere, I guess, when there's so much of a political overlay?
And this is, of course, my personal view. I think it's very difficult to do that because the subtleties of the real argument are not there. I could be asked, and you no doubt ask, do you think we should be building these pipelines?
Right.
And the answer, yes, we should, or no, we shouldn't.
Right.
It's a false question and it's a false argument. The question that we should be asking is, what is the market going to be over the investment life of those pipelines and those transition systems? Where are the markets going to be? And what does our product need to look like in order to be able to establish those markets?
Answer the needs of the market.
Then the whole question of pipeline or no pipeline goes away because it comes out of the process, it comes out of the plan. And I think that whilst we've got this somewhat toxic binary system, we are going to be trapped. But we're going to be trapped by a unimportant tactical argument.
So what do we do in the short term? Because these decisions have to be made about TMX or who's going to own it, or these are current questions.
I think they are, and I think I'm not in any way belittling the tactical discussion and the tactical need.
No, because it has to happen.
Because it has to happen.
Yeah.
But put that in the context of we need these pipelines now in order to be able to fulfill the market needs, and the jobs and the investment and the return that we need to finance the energy transition that we're talking about here. And in that process, we are going to make Canadian hydrocarbons, the lowest carbon intensity products, most sustainable in the world, which will match several things. One, it means that we have a more sustainable period of transition. And secondly, it means that we'll be able to be using these hydrocarbons post the combustion age, if you like, into the other really important things that hydrocarbons can be used for. You know, the creation of materials and carbon nanofibers, all of the things that a modern economy is going to need, you know, post the next 30 years. Mm-hmm. So I think the conversation needs to shift to, yes, we need the pipelines, but we're doing it because of this. If it's just a pipeline just to, you know, increase our production tactically,
right,
you're not going to breach that binary argument.
But we are fairly environmentally or ethically sustainable in this country, aren't we? I mean, isn't the work that's being done in that sector now really improved?
Yes, it has. I think that arguably, I think we're the most environmentally sensitive, you know, hydrocarbon oil and gas producer in the world.
Because that's the whole argument. I mean, we're prepared to bring Saudi oil down the St. Lawrence, but which I would argue is not that ethically produced, but we're having trouble getting our own across the country.
Yeah, we bring in oil from Saudi, you know, which is you know, questionable in terms of their approach. And also, of course, in Eastern Canada, we import massive amounts of gas from the Marcellus field in northeast states. So, but you then start using the H word, and you start saying, well, this is terrible. You know, we're incredible hypocrites in the sense of what we do. But that's not a particular. You straight into that binary discussion there.
Again,
what we're trying to do is lift that discussion into where is this going to be for our children and our grandchildren, and us having this just pointing fingers at each other, calling each other hypocrites is not particularly helpful.
In your world, and I read with interest, let me just double check this here now, that SRC, the Saskatchewan Research Council, is the second largest research and technology organization in the country.
Yeah, best kept secret.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
So second only to the NRC?
Second only to NRC.
So who do you have this intelligent, radical, center, rational conversation with? Are you in the scientific and the energy community at least talking to each other about it?
We are, and I think the throwaway answer to that is anybody who'll listen to us.
Welcome. You can stay for another.
You know, the answers. The SRC. Between my predecessor and myself, you know, the company has now got to the, and we're a Crown Corporation, we're owned by the people of Saskatchewan,
right?
Have got to a position where now I think that we not only have an effective voice here in Saskatchewan, but we're starting to have a little bit more of a pan-Canadian voice.
This must give you some cred here, is what I'm saying.
It gives us some credibility, particularly in the areas that we're involved in. I mean, we've been talking about energy transition. Yeah. We have interest and expertise in small modular reactors.
Right. I want to get to that.
So right across the board to agriculture and renewables. But you asked the question, who are we talking to? Who's listening? I think our government. We're owned by government.
Yeah.
So we've had the opportunity to have some really good discussions, and that doesn't mean just being on transmit. It means on listen. And again, it's this radical center. What's possible? What can we do to build this, rather than take, you know, some cemented in position one side or the other?
And if you can find a way to make it useful for the political class, you are creating jobs, you are making it greener, whatever the necessary rhetoric is, then you will be heard.
Yeah, exactly.
And it does happen to be fact-based.
And it's fact-based. It's it's the old just the facts on this. But it's just the facts. But this is what the options are.
Right.
We can take route left, and we go that way. We take route right, we can go that way. I'm not talking in political terms, but I'm talking in technical.
I want to come back to, because you talked about the small nuclear reactors, which 20 years ago, there was potentially an embrace of nuclear, and then everybody, it was memories of 3 Mile Island or whatever, Chernobyl and all these things. But now people are coming back to the notion that if you can have these small portable reactors, you can go in and run a plant, run a mine, run a school, who knows what, that maybe this is a cleaner answer.
I think it comes back to it being part of that energy mix that the energy transition will take us to. So, there's this, I have this vision that we have small modular reactors taking a significant amount of the base load, which is the ongoing requirement, and then supported by renewables, wind, solar, geothermal, and then have storage capability and smart grids, so that all of these technologies, very different technologies,
can feed in
all
and
of
out.
them integrate into a utility-based support. And that's what the next 20 years is going to look like. Small modular reactors themselves, I think we've crossed the Rubicon. I think that 5 years ago, if we'd been having this conversation, it would have been, oh my goodness, it's nuclear and things like that. I think small modular reactors, people look at these small modular systems that can be deployed, containable, deployed very easily. And they see them as being something that is a good part of the mix. For us in Saskatchewan, it's a huge opportunity because we're such a large uranium producer.
Exactly.
We have the opportunity to produce components and particularly fuel.
And that would be a whole other set of industries.
And so, you talked a little bit about, the politicians here. What are they seeing here? They're seeing this energy change as an opportunity to bring jobs and investment and growth to the province.
The AI component everywhere, which is now part of, vacuuming your house, for God's sake, right? It's just everywhere. Do we need that developed uniquely, either locally or within Canada, or is that technology accessible enough to take all these other things to the next level?
Again, I think that it has changed radically in the last 3, 4, 5 years.
Okay.
5 years ago, it was something that happened in universities.
Right.
And, it was the
artificial
great
intelligence,
brain there,
scary,
and scary, and what was it called, SensorNet or whatever that now AI is democratized.
Yeah.
We have AI in our phones. Our accounting system works on AI. So we, which are modules that we purchase and we characterize and we configure for our own use. So everything from your Saskatchewan farmer who will still be no doubt in his bib overalls, but he'll be sitting there with multi-screens in front of him in his office, watching drones operate autonomously, monitoring the crop, monitoring whether he will have his harvesters, he will have his tractors, everything like that.
We went to PAMI in Humboldt
PAMI,
and watching them sort of develop these things where, yes, you're sitting in the multi-million-dollar cab, but you're seeing this area needs a little bit more, water or seed or whatever it may, fertilizer. And it's just changed the whole game.
It's almost like, and I'm picking on Microsoft because they're always good to pick on. We all use PowerPoint and Word and Excel. Now you can just pull down the AI module in Microsoft and then create your own AI capability for anything. Yeah. Whether it's driving a tractor or whether in some cases we're looking at for genomics in wheat, and so it's become a democratized, accessible technology, and
that just makes the fundamental difference.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to jump to another topic here because you guys do so much at the Research Council, but the notion of DNA, I know you're doing some work on DNA, so when I think about AI, I think about that. What's the next frontier in that, whether it's plants or humans, or I'm not sure what you're working on?
Well, we look at everything from plant genomics, looking at quality control, things like, believe it or not, looking at whether a cannabis plant is male or female, which is incredibly important to cannabis
Did
growers.
Not know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
fact.
You know what? A year ago, I didn't know that either. But it is really
that
important.
makes me feel better.
It's really important whether you know it's a male or female plant in terms of what the productivity is. So being able
The female plant is more productive. Is that
you were going to ask me that.
Just go with yes.
Hit the buzzer.
Go with yes.
I'll go with yes. And you know what? You'll get loads of people going, no, it's the male plant that's actually
I'm just
important.
kidding. I don't really care.
Yeah.
Okay.
But also looking at quality control of systems. So you're looking at, whether there's mutations created or whether those are beneficial, whether they're not. So there's a whole range of this. Now, AI, I'll give you an example. We were looking at a particular crop pest where our expert, and he is a real expert, looks at the data, and it takes him about 2 weeks to go through all of the genetic mapping on these particular genetic runs
Bugs.
to be able to understand the answer. We applied AI to that, and it took 2 hours.
Yeah.
And that was only because the algorithm wasn't optimized yet.
Right. So you can go out and say, here's the problem, now let's figure it out.
Yeah. Now, the thing is with AI, people get the thing that you put an AI on the desk and it sort of like works everything out itself. It doesn't.
No.
It's like a baby. You've got to teach it everything for it to then be able to go on and do what it does.
Then it grows up and terrorizes you when it's
18. Then it grows
18.
up and takes over world domination.
So all these things merge. That's the point. When you're talking about DNA, it's not just sending off our spit sample to Ancestry.com here. It's actually changing how we grow, produce, target enemies wherever, whether they're viral or what they may be.
Exactly. And AI is playing a key role in being able to accelerate that technology. But all of the technologies, I mean, we were talking about everything from small modular reactors to optimizing smart grids, optimizing how wind and solar and battery storage can be combined together. That's not going to be run by an operator going in and tweaking a dial every 2 minutes or 2 hours. AI will do it every 10 microseconds or milliseconds.
What's the most interesting thing, other than boy and girl marijuana? What's the most interesting thing that you think is going on that is, I hate the phrase, but that is a game changer? I mean, everything we've talked about is actually a game changer. Is there something that, I don't know, you go home from work and go, if this really happens, that's going to change the world?
I think it's a little combination of things. So I won't give you a shopping list here, but I think some of the ones are going to be here in Canada. The ability to produce rare earths, I think, is going to be huge. I think small modular reactors, which hopefully, touch wood, we will have the first in our province in the next 12 years. And that gives you an idea of how much work has to be done. You can't just sort of like buy one off the shelf as a big Duracell battery and then plug it in. There's a lot of work to be done there. So the new energy industries, rare earths, lithium, hydrogen. We haven't talked too much about hydrogen yet, but that is going to be
and we are advanced on that.
And we are advanced and advancing very rapidly in areas of hydrogen. Hydrogen, I suspect that we will. This is where I'll get shot down in flames and the buzzer will go off. But I think we will leapfrog over charging stations quite quickly. It'll go from Betamax to VHS to DVDs real quick on this one. Is we'll move from charging stations to hydrogen filling stations where we actually have a hydrogen fuel cell that's powering the watermelon, that's powering
How do we
vehicle.
prevent people from investing in charging stations? I mean, I'm just pulling, because that's today's thinking, because they don't know what you know. And then they're so invested in that. It is like VHS and Beta. And there was so much money over here that even though Beta was probably a better product, VHS won the day.
We don't live in a command economy here. We live in a market economy. So what is going to happen here is that there is going to be a really healthy competition between charging, between hydrogen, between natural gas vehicles and different. And it's just the way innovation works. Innovation stands on the shoulders of the last thing that may have failed. So there's going to be that healthy market competition between these systems, and that's what develops technology. It would be if I ruled the world, we'd be able to say, okay,
let's have that
scenario.
Okay.
We'd be saying, okay, we're going to go into this, into this, into this.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't necessarily, even if you put your best brains on it, end up with the optimum technology, because the technology comes out of that white heat of competition and innovation.
Exactly.
For technologies, and that's something we're good at here in Canada. We're relatively poor at commercialization and application of what we develop. But in terms of this technology readiness level that you may have heard of, from 1 to 5, we're awesome. From 6 to 9, not so awesome.
What about, and this will be my final point here, the people piece. We're just 1 million people, 1 million plus. When you try to convince somebody to move to a province or a city where it's 40 below for a good chunk of time, air service isn't great. I mean, even pre-COVID, never mind post. Is this attracting the people you need?
Again, perhaps 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, I would say, maybe not so much.
Yeah.
Now there is a recognition growing within that ecosystem that we talked about, that a lot of stuff is happening in Saskatchewan. In terms of, and not only a lot of stuff on the technology side, but we've got the resources. We've got these modern resources. We've got the rare earths. We've got lithium.
The playpen is all there.
The playpen's all there, and it's great, and it is a great place to live. If you look at the current situation with regards to COVID-19. I suspect us having a population of this sort of scale has allowed us to contain and control these more effectively than other more densely populated cities. So we've got good quality of life, great resource base, and really growing innovation culture here, both from the universities through us, RTO, into clean tech and new startup companies here. And I think things like this start to get the message out, is that Saskatchewan is the place to be.
And we're starting to see a lot of that migration. People who, needed to go to Toronto or needed to go to New York are now saying, boy, Saskatchewan and Oregon, or, well, maybe not Oregon these days, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They look attractive. There's a different kind of lifestyle there that you can have.
Exactly. And, once you, in places like Saskatchewan, once you start to create a critical mass, then it draws more people in. And I think that we are in the process of creating that critical mass.
We just have to work on your Saskatchewan accent, I think.
Well, that's it.
Yeah, it's coming.
I'm moving. I'm in the Azores now. Soon I'll be in Nova Scotia. And it'll move across.
Moving west. Such a pleasure to talk to you, and I thank you for not only doing what you're doing, but for engaging in the conversation, because we've got to get past all the political rhetoric, and we've got to solve problems.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thanks for being there.